Hi.
Hello.
Hello and welcome to this very first interview podcast of God knows what kind of episode this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a thing. We'll figure it out. I was actually thinking about this too. I'm like, wait, are we gonna have to like do an intro or like set something up or like have a cool animation? And it's like, we'll just kind of roll with it. We're just chatting.
Yeah, let's refrain from investing way too much into something that might not pan out whatsoever.
Yeah, I've already contracted Michael Bay to start. We're $14 million into our podcast intro, into our interview intro. I'm sure it'll pay off.
Isaiah, I don't know how to tell you this.
Is that not how podcasts usually go? I think that's what they say, right? Invest. That's the power of indie is that it's super capital intensive and very long lead time and very professional.
Yes, I've heard this in the grapevine. Yes. Amazing. Okay, before we get started on the actual interview questions, do you want to do like a short introduction? Hi, I am this, and this.
I guess so. Yes. Hi, I am. My name's Isaiah Ratliff. I am a writer guy slash art instigator, I would say. So I make Beach Lighthouse. I write the Beach Lighthouse and produce it slash coordinate it along with a bunch of other random things. But yeah, I like to write. I like abstract concepts. I like creativity. I like working with a bunch of creative people. So I do the things that go in that direction.
I think that's a good segue into our very first official question, which is tell us the story of the Beached Lighthouse.
So Beach Lighthouse is a story about a guy named Jay who's looking for a job that he needs to pay off a debt that he has. And he ends up at a town pretty far out, outskirts, a little ways. And in the outskirts of the town that's pretty remote itself, there's this kind of weird bed and breakfast, kind of place that has a gimmick sort of thing that it's built around the middle. It's built around a lighthouse. So the lighthouse goes through like literally right through the middle of this building, this bed and breakfast. It's out in the middle of the desert. And so through a couple of happenstance, chance, and some other events, Jay happens to find a kind of flyer for this role and goes there and proceeds to try and hold down a job for the first time in his life for longer than like a couple of weeks.
Sounds very relatable.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So then, of course, there's a crew there, and obviously, there's a little, or as you might guess, there's a little bit more to this bed and breakfast lighthouse thing than just normal, you know, pancakes and eggs and cozy beds. It gets all kinds of the very first day he's there, starting this kind of trial period. Two guests show up that are not human. To put it.
I
uh,
saw the moment of like, how do I explain
yeah,
this, guys?
giant pelicans. I mean, giant anthropomorphic pelicans that are kind of like magic vizier type people, and things go on. So it's a story. There's a lot in it. There's a lot in that story. It's not in that we're working on, but I know where we're going. There's a number of reasons why that story is compelling to me, but I really
Mhm.
like the idea of just exploring, people's bonds, people how their kind of structure the net of their life gets created and when that becomes restrictive or not and how people deal with that. So all in a interesting,
Awesome.
magical kind of fairy tale, surreal, absurd package.
Yeah, awesome. And what was the motivation to write this story?
Mm. Okay, so there's two. Because when the ending came to mind, it felt potent to me. It resonated with me to the point that I wanted to see how that story gets to that point. For me, when I'm thinking about ideas, it's almost like getting to like the real deep source, because this
Mm.
series is relatively long, I would say, even though it's not like it's no One Piece, but like, there's a, you know, number of issues, right? And so like to have something that resonates enough that I know will matter to me, in book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on.
Mhm.
It's like you find that piece of that like emotional core or that piece of resonance, and it's like this is enough. This is like so powerful for me that I know I could generate a lot out of this because it's like really real. I was interested in this story and kind of mulling it in my head for a while, and it wasn't until like maybe I was a good way through the first book, kind of drafting and just kind of playing around with it, or kind of drafting the larger blocks, that the ending really like hit me, like a lightning bolt sort of thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so now that was the core motivation. And then there's another motivation that I can't say yet, and I know it's, like, annoying because
Oh, keeping secrets from us.
yes.
Oh.
Yes, it's gonna be that has to do with a
Okay.
completely other thing, which is more like a lot of the stories we made before, like, and I say we because, of course, you're the wonderful artist we've worked with for many years on many different stories. There's, like,
Yeah.
animals, robots, people, but this one, it's not too crazy to draw a parallel between, let's say, the main character in this one and myself in a lot of ways, which is uncomfortable. I would honestly prefer not to, but there's
Really?
reasons. Yeah, 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 for sure. Like, it's important. That and this other that's it ties to the other
Mhm.
reason why I feel like I am, like, karmically bound to write this series and another.
Okay, so we covered motivation, but another thing that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about when they discuss stories and things they make are the hurdles that kind of happen throughout the process of making a story. So, for this one, your question is what was the biggest hurdle or hurdles that you had to work through when working on this story?
Like, still kinda working on it, so it's still like there man, it's interesting. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of just mechanics to
Yeah.
learn, right? Everything from how to host it, how to get it on the website, what's a good PDF viewer, how do you distribute it,
Hmm.
learning Scrivener, like, going from Word to Final Draft Pro to, like, I was writing in Excel for a while, like, literally doing beats in Excel. Scrivener's better. I would recommend Scrivener. But honestly, Excel has its simplicity to it. I'd say one of the primary hurdles, which I didn't really realize, but it's like a kind of a constant like gravity on the thing. It's just there's a lot to learn. And it didn't really feel so bad, or like it didn't feel like a major hurdle at the start because I was just kind of like more focused on just the story and all this kind of stuff. But once you make a decision to say like, okay, well, am I going to finish this thing? Is this, I'm going to bring in other people? Okay, I actually want to get this out in front of people. Like as
Hmm.
the kind of commitment goes further and further up like that, then like the surface area of stuff to learn and that you could learn just goes like whoop exponential. Then that's not even to mention, craft just in writing. Like, you could spend, and I have, although I feel like I'm kind of coming back into balance where it's like you could spend more time reading about writing than writing. And there was definitely a time in my life that was like definitely the case where it's like read more than I wrote, read about writing more than I wrote. So like, your classics, Robert McKee's story, making of story, all kinds of stuff, War of Art, all kinds of stuff. And so, like, finding a way to modulate your energy there, because like, usually just kind of if you're focused nice, you can just kinda let your own enthusiasm carry you in a way.
Hmm.
But when it's like, "Oh, yeah, I could, like, learn," like, just panel layout and shot composition itself has a whole thing. There's another book that I was reading, like, Making the Story for Animation or something like that. It's like a big book that's more
Nice.
about animation, but it's all about, like, animatics and shot composition. It's visual storytelling and from that perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like trying to figure out the order of operations in the core and like what is it I'm trying to focus on right now? Like there's a really good piece of advice. This was in I think it's in Damien Knight, like how to make short story something something, where he says like focus when you're improving your craft, focus on one thing at a time. And it's like that's really key. Which is the extrapolation of another piece of advice, which is like never write and edit at the same time because those are two different like motions.
Yeah.
It's like, don't do if you're strength building and cardio are like 2 different motions. So that's like the hurdle one. It's just like building the kind of sea legs, the familiarity to
Mhm.
be able to like direct your energy, not get overwhelmed, not get too dispersed, have a clear something in your head about organizing and like what's the next thing. Cause it's always, there's more quotes I could
Yeah.
throw at you, which like, what's the most exciting project? The next one. The next one is always the most exciting project, but like finishing the one
Pretty
that you're
much.
doing now, that's like more mechanically, but for the story, for like, so that's like the more like kind of physical nuts and bolts tactical one. The other hurdle is kind of the same thing, but on the creative side, which is like understanding what I don't want to say what effect, but like what the story wants to be, should be, what you're trying to say with it. I
Mhm.
really think that clarity is not to be undervalued in terms of the
Mhm.
bones of a story because it's a similar motion of like people think that constraints are like antithetical to creativity when really they are like integral. They enable creativity. Like
Mhm.
having a really direct, clear theme, whatever, like idea about the like nugget of the story.
Mhm.
It's really hard to do. It's hard to do for somebody like
Yeah.
me who loves just connecting random dots to everything. But it really powerful because it's like you fix your lens. And so then everything in the
Yeah.
story now has a purpose, now has its place. And it has to be really simple and clear and direct, at least in your mind, because that is what enables all of the subtext to like seep in for people. It's hard to do an analogy, but I was just getting a hint at this. Like this is more recent, right? Where it's like, oh, like if you say this is about this, then that changes everything. Really the key
Yeah.
like waterfall, like more practically on the creative side, is if you know what your story is about, then you know what the conflicts are going to be about, which is that's the essence of the
Mhm.
story, I would say.
Yeah.
Like if your story is about how, greed can undo you or something like that, then you know that all the conflicts are going to be around like it's almost like the argument is going to be around well, why do people become greedy? Or like, what's the
Mhm.
appealing side? And then how you get out of that? And how does the punishment manifest? And like, what warning signs are then ignored that allows the person to go further and further, right? Deeper and deeper into,
Mhm.
you know, their greed or whatever. And then at the end, it's like, how are they ultimately redeemed or fail to be redeemed? And then what are the consequences of that? But
Yeah.
all of that only like that whole kind of like splinter fan out comes from that first seed thing, which is like this is a story about greed, or this is a story about what I'm saying about this story is like the thing I want to express is something like, how greed can cripple somebody or whatever. Greed can cripple you if over like then you extrapolate, I don't know now, about
Mhm.
getting clarity in your story, right? So it's hard
Mhm.
to do for me. There's an inherent contradiction, which is not to be that's okay. I love contradictions because for other reasons we can get into later,
Yeah.
contradictions are a natural cause of trying to understand and play with reality because reality is bigger than the rational mind. So then things run into contradictions because then that's blah, blah, blah. So I
Yes.
think for creative folks, there's a certain species that's a whole other thing. Like contradiction, there's a contradiction baked in here that I think a lot of creative people run into because I think a lot of creative people like synthesis. So they tend to favor open form solutions instead of closed form solutions. So to boil down your art or whatever. And you can do it in many different ways. Like some people do it through your intellect, which is what I think a lot. But other people, you can boil something down to a single gesture, like in painting, right? By just like starting with a
Yeah.
line. And then it's like, okay, now that line's there. And now I'm gonna whatever comes out from that is what the thing is gonna be. And it's like, oh look, it's like a profile of a person or like it's a mountain. So it doesn't have to be this big, huge intellectual thing. But there's that contradiction, I feel like, in a lot if you're thinking about it, it's hard to, like, close it off to converge as opposed to, like, "Oh, but, like, all these other things on the side, that means this, like, but I wanna get this in there, this in there."
Mhm.
So it's difficult to boil, like, a story down to a theme, let's say, or to really get clarity within yourself to be like, "What is the thing that resonates with me about this thing?" like the if I could articulate it as like a
Mm.
core atomic thing, what is it? There's also a
Yeah.
fear, I think, like dispersing the flame, which could happen. There's a really interesting
Mm.
it always calls to me this quote by Stephen King. Like there's like a yin and yang about this. Stephen King and David Lynch, right? About writing down ideas and like how to be precious about ideas or not, where Stephen King's like, I never write down ideas. The good ideas will stick with you in your head, like
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
basically.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and so I never write them down because if I forget about them, they probably weren't they didn't
That
have the
good. Yeah.
juice, you know, to really facilitate what needed to happen. Lynch
Yeah.
has said the complete opposite, right? Is like I always write down every idea because if you ever forget an idea that like you know was really good, you're gonna feel horrible. And like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, there's a trade off, but I really, in terms of like a filter function, letting the
Mhm.
ideas stick with you. If an idea has persisted, I'm talking about like for years, you know, like years in your head. This is like there's ideas for
Yeah.
stories that have been in my head for like literally years, like 8, 10 years. I mean, we've been working on Beach
Wow.
Lighthouse since however long. It's been a minute. And it's like, okay, I know there's something. So like I feel more comfortable like kind of digging into those ideas because I know the resonance within myself can
Mhm.
hold up to that. Like,
Yeah.
versus some other stories, it's like, what is this really about? And it's like, and you dig into it, and it's like, oh, it's just this other thing I always were thinking about another form or just another manifestation, which can still be worth exploring, but it's not as like, it's less compelling in a way now that I know that this is this. And I think there's a fear to dig into that, anyways. For me, at this point, for the ideas that I know are like strongly resonant with me, it's worthy. That's a hurdle is to try and, to get back to your question, right? Because like, what's the hurdle? The hurdle is getting that clarity for those ideas that then will help
Mhm.
shape the conflict of the story. Shape the It informs
Mhm.
the conflict, so and then it informs the character arcs, so then it informs the like everything. It informs what people would call is like the story, which is really the
Yeah.
path of conflict and change for characters.
Yeah.
It's another all this there's some really interesting things focusing on, you know, conflict, all that kind of stuff, which I'm not a big fan of. So it's like how to make that happen. But anyways, those are the
Mhm. Yeah.
those are the hurdles is on the on the technical side, learning how to manage your energy in terms of like there's just so much to learn and like what and
Yeah.
how to make sure you're prioritizing like butt in chair writing time, at least at this. And then on the more creative side, it's getting that clarity with what it is you're trying to say, do.
Oh, yeah. Those are real good nuggets. But we also know one thing that every story needs, and that's good characters. So the next question, which is more than logical, I think, is what's your favorite character and why is it Jay?
It's so hard. Okay, I might do a little bit of it. This might be a shock, and I feel like it's cheating a little bit because I know how things are going. But I
Okay.
would say my favorite character is Clara, actually.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I love Jay. Like what we talked about before, where it's like, again, he represents a certain aspect generally. And I'm interested to see like between Jay's arc, which is the main story, but then Clara's arc, which is kind of like a complement. They're really kind of intertwined, the two of them, in terms of like what's going on in the story. That's why I mean I'm cheating a little bit because I know where the story's gonna go. And so I'm thinking like the whole things. I think like, Clara's where she's at and her arc and how things are going, it's a slightly richer thing that she's wrestling with versus Jay's thing where he's wrestling with is vital. The word that comes to mind is simpler, but that's not exactly right.
Mhm.
It's a little more natural, it's a little more in terms of relatable, like, in terms of, like, "Ah, yes, there's things that people have to go through, and these are certain things, and so it's like, it makes sense that this is a thing." But Clara's has been in a unique circumstance, is in a unique spot to try and like, the things she's trying to resolve are, like, further dispersed, I would say,
Mhm.
than the things that
Okay.
Jay is trying to resolve. And so in that sense and she responds to it in a way that I like, it resonates a lot with me in terms of she's a It's interesting. They're both curious. Jay and Clara are both very curious people or open people, but it feels very different, very different. So yeah, like that's the way that how she's dealing with the situation that she has found herself in and finds herself in is like compelling to me. But we haven't really seen much of Clara so far. So like we're gonna have to make good on that. like, you know.
Yes, we don't want to set up any expectations that we are not going to meet later on in the story. So,
Oh, we will. Yeah, we will for sure on this one.
yeah,
But yeah,
awesome.
it's great.
Yeah, fantastic answer. A little bit surprising, and I don't want to say disappointing, but that did not go the way that I planned. Okay. But that's all right. We'll move on to the next question, which is
Who's your favorite
the
character?
less. Who's my favorite? Oh, well, so far from all the characters that I have been introduced to and worked on, Maddie holds a very special place in my heart. She is a fellow creative, one just fantastically funny and entertaining and charming character. So I really love her. I think she's so much fun. But recently, and I'm just like trying not to spoil for the third book that we're working on. That's not even close to being published yet, but in that particular book, I have grown to appreciate and love a character who hasn't shown up yet that I know was here. Well, he did make a little bit of an appearance, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. That we get to know somebody who did pop in for a little bit, and he's just a hoot. Just a hoot. I love him. So fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a little bit subjective because I do tend to gravitate to a little bit of those archetypes of characters where they seem standoffish, they seem a little borderline mean, but actually they're nice.
Mhm.
When you peel down the layers, they're nice, but at first glance they make you want to cry, just like an onion.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely understand. There's a couple of characters like that in the story. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting to hear because yeah, that's another weird thing, right? Where it's like